Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivara Dari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivara Dari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivara Dari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivara Dari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashtotara Shata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashtotara Shata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveda Gauda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we are reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 10, text number 10. Is that correct? Yep. Okay. Staulyam Karshyam Vyadhaya Adhayascha Kshutrid Bhayam Kalir Icha Jaracha Nidra Ratir Manyur Aham Madap Shucho Dehena Jatasya Hi Me Na Santi Staulyam Staulyam Karshyam Vyadhya Adhayascha Kshutrid Bhayam Kaliri Chajaracha Nidraratir Manyuraham Madashucho Dehena Jatasya Himena Santi Staulyam Nakarsham Vyadhya Adhayascha Kshutrid Bhayam Kaliri Chajaracha Nidraratir Manyuraham Madashucho Dehena Jatasya Himena Santi Staulyam Karsham Vyadhya Adhayascha Kshutrid Bhayam Kaliri Chajaracha Nidraratir Manyuraham Madashucho Dehena Jatasya Himena Santi Staulyam Karshyam Vyadhya Adhayascha Kshutrid Bhayam Kaliri Chajaracha Nidraratir Manyuraham Madashucho Kshutrid Bhayam Kaliri Chajaracha Anybody else? Zoomland.
Alam Karsham Vedaya Adayascha Kshutrit Bhayam Kalir Icha Jaracha Nidraratir Manur Aham Madashucha Dehena Jatasya Himena Shanti.
Okay. Staulyam, being very stout and strong. Karshyam, being skinny and weak. Vyadhayaha, the pains of the body such as disease. Adhaya, the pains of the mind. Cha, and. Kshutrit bhayam, hunger, thirst, and fear. Kalihi, quarrels between two persons. Icha, desires. Sorry, one second. Jara, old age. Cha, and. Nidra, sleep. Ratihi, attachment for sense gratification. Manyuhu, anger. Aham, false identification in the bodily concept of life. Madaha, illusion. Shuchaha, lamentation. Dehena, with this body. Jatasya, of one who has taken birth. He, certainly. Me, of me. Na, not. Santi, exist. Translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Fatness, thinness, bodily and mental distress, thirst, hunger, fear, disagreement, desires for material happiness, old age, sleep, attachment for material possessions, anger, lamentation, illusion, and identification of the body with the self are all transformations of the material covering of the spirit soul. A person absorbed in the bodily conception is affected by these things, but I am free from all bodily conceptions. Consequently, I am neither fat nor skinny nor anything else you have mentioned. Purport. Srila Narottam Das Thakur has sung, Dehar Smriti Nahi Jar, Sangsara Bandhana Kahantar. One who is spiritually advanced has no connection with the body or with the bodily actions and reactions. When one comes to understand that he is not the body and is therefore neither fat nor skinny, one attains the topmost form of spiritual realization. When one is not spiritually realized, the bodily conception entangles one in the material world. At the present moment, all human society is laboring under the bodily conception. Therefore, in the Shastras, people in this age are referred to as Dvipad Pashu, two-legged animals. No one can be happy in a civilization conducted by such animals. Our Krishna Consciousness movement is trying to raise fallen human society to the status of spiritual understanding. It is not possible for everyone to become immediately self-realized like Jada Bharat. However, as stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, Nashta Prayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, by spreading the Bhagavat principles, we can raise human society to the platform of perfection. When one is not affected by bodily conceptions, one can advance in the Lord's devotional service. To the Lord's devotional service. Nashta prayeshva bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavatyutama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtaki. The more we advance our freedom from the bodily conception, the more we are fixed in devotional service, and the more we are happy and peaceful. In this regard, Srila Madhvacharya says that those who are too materially affected continue the bodily conception. Such persons are concerned with different bodily symptoms, whereas one freed from bodily conception lives without the body, even in the material condition. Om Ajnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupakadamayam Drati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitangscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kantha Radha Kanta Namostude Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So here we have a list of things related to people who are absorbed in the material bodily conception. So all of these things, fatness, thinness, bodily and mental distress, thirst, hunger, fear, disagreement, desires for material happiness, old age, sleep, attachment for material possessions, anger, lamentation, illusion, and identification of the body with the self. These all arise because of having a material body, and then beyond just having a material body, identifying with that material body, identifying the material body to be the self. So this is the basic problem or the basic issue of the living entity in the material world. There's a verse in Srimad Bhagavatam, Natevidu svartakatinghi vishnum darashayaye bahir artamaninaha, that those who consider bahir artamaninaha, those who consider external sense objects, sense gratification, to be very valuable, artamaninaha, those people, they can't understand the real goal of life. The real goal of life, they can't understand svartakati, which is to engage in the service of Lord Krishna, and after having gone back home, back to Godhead. So by missing this whole point of having a material body, of being in the material world, these people, like Prabhupada mentions in the purport, the Shastras refer to these people as dvipad pashu meaning two-legged animals. So there's another verse in Srimad Bhagavatam which says, Yasyatma buddhi kunapetri dhatuke svaddi kalatradushu bhoma ijjadi yat tirtha buddhi salilena karhichij janeshva bigyeshu sa eva gokaraha. So one who accepts the body, the inert body composed of mucus, bile, and air to be himself, one who accepts his wife and children as permanently his own, and one who, thinks that the land of his birth is worshipable, and who sees the holy places as merely the water there, and doesn't identify with, feel kinship with, or even visit those who are wise in spiritual truth. Such a person is no better than a cow or an ass, than an animal. Because human life, the human form of life is distinguished from animal life in the sense that we have the ability to understand svartagati. We have the ability to understand what the actual purpose is. We have the ability to understand dharma. Whereas the animals, due to being covered by the modes of material nature in a very extreme way, they have no ability to understand higher topics concerning spiritual life. And so these different things, fatness, thinness, bodily, mental distress, all these things are coming from identifying with the material body. So one goal of Krishna consciousness, of course there's many different objectives in different stages of Krishna consciousness, but one major goal of Krishna consciousness is to transcend these different things, to transcend identification with the body, to transcend everything that comes with that. And as a result, like Prabhupada says in the purport, that the more we do this, the more we're freed from the bodily conception, the more we are happy and peaceful, because we're undisturbed by all these different miseries of the body. Like Balaram's verse yesterday, he was reading, and Jada Bharat says that if this journey and the path leading there were mine, there would be many troubles. Because the fact is that in this material world, in general, and also in this particular situation with Jada Bharat, if we identify with it, this world is padam padam yad vipadam, there's danger at every step. So if we identify with this world, and if we identify with this, this body and the things related to it, if we identify with that as belonging to us, then we'll also identify with all the suffering. We'll also identify with all the misery. So this happiness and this peace, this being undisturbed by the sufferings of the body and by the sufferings of the material world, this is kind of a preliminary condition of spiritual life. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma na shochati na kankshati. That one who is beyond the modes of material nature, one who is on the Brahma Bhuta platform, who has transcended the bodily concept of life, he neither laments nor desires for anything. So those who have this understanding, they're very peaceful. And Krishna also says, Gyatva shantim richati, that by understanding, by having spiritual understanding, by having consciousness of me, one can be freed from the pangs of material existence. And so for many people, this will be the ultimate goal of spiritual life, is to become peaceful, to become undisturbed by the threefold miseries. And this is certainly the case with the shunya bodies and the maya bodies. And the understanding is that this world is so full of suffering, and these people who adopt this philosophy, they're so burnt out and traumatized by this material world that they just want to just get rid of it. That becomes the ultimate goal, is just get rid of it, get rid of the suffering. And I don't want to have a body, I don't want to have anything, because my only experience with the body has been suffering. I don't want to have any kind of existence. This is specifically the case with the shunya bodies, is that I don't want to have any kind of existence because my experience with existence has just been suffering. So in that way, it's kind of like spiritual suicide, particularly for the shunya bodies. For the maya bodies, it's a little bit different, but the same kind of thing is there. In one sense, this understanding to negate the material world, it's not wrong. It's not a wrong thing, or it's not a bad goal, because to get free from this material world, to get free from the bodily conception of life, you have to be free from karma. You have to be free from false ego. So to transcend the sufferings of this world, it's actually not necessarily a bad thing. And then once you transcend false ego, free from karma, free from the bodily concept of life, consequently you become eligible. Sorry, I'm not sure what's going on. You become eligible excuse me, for liberation. You can get out of the material world. And that's also, of course, a goal of ours. A goal of ours is to get out of the material world, hopefully. Because material life there's so much suffering. It's so much suffering in material life. Threefold miseries: adi bhautika, adi daivaka, adi atmaka. Miseries from material nature, miseries from the body, miseries from other living entities. So much misery in material life. And Prabhupada always emphasized that we should be very pessimistic about the prospects for happiness in this world. Because we see that so many people are trying to find happiness in this world, but you would be hard-pressed to find anybody who's actually found it. And by hard-pressed, I mean you won't find anybody who's actually found it. You won't find anybody who's found happiness in this world, because this world is designed for suffering. It's Martya Loka. It's the world of death. And Krishna says, Dukkhalayam ashashvatam, that this world is temporary and full of misery. And Krishna, of course, made this world. He made it in that way. He made it Dukkhalayam ashashvatam. And materialists, they have a hard time understanding this, and they often criticize devotees, and not just devotees, but anybody who's pursuing spiritual life or has any kind of interest beyond material, gross material life. Often they're criticized for this, criticized for being, too negative. Recently I was watching, there's one interview, which I'm sure most of the devotees here have seen, with Ted Patrick and Hridayananda Maharaj and Balavanta. They're on some talk show. And anyway, Ted Patrick in the interview, he says that they're making the kids eat off of wax paper. So anyway, but the point is that Ted Patrick, he was with this lady who was there, who was, I guess, like worked for her or for his deprogramming organization, or whatever you want to call it, organization. But and so this lady, she's speaking and she's saying that, you know, you read their books and all their books say is this is bad, this world is bad, you know, this is bad, that's bad, don't do this, don't do that, and it's all negative. And she said that these people, they live a life of dying, which is true. We do live a life of dying as devotees, but so do they. Exactly, yeah. So do the materialists. Everybody lives a life of dying. But the fact is that the difference between the devotees and the materialists is that the devotees actually have some kind of factual realization of this. They have an understanding that this world is temporary and that we're going to die. And they understand that to be actually something which is quite significant, and something that should influence the choices that we make in this life, the fact that we're going to die. And Krishna says that Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadi Dukkha Doshanam Darshanam, that to understand that birth, death, and old age and disease, to understand the evils of birth, death, old age, and disease is actually intelligent. Because this world is temporary, and devotees have discrimination. It's a symptom of knowledge, is to have discrimination to understand what's temporary, what's eternal, what will cause happiness, and what will cause distress. And so, ultimately, we are looking for eternal happiness. And the happiness in this world, which is based on the body, which is temporary, will ultimately cause us suffering, will ultimately cause distress. And so the intelligent course of action for anybody who's looking for real happiness, looking for lasting happiness, is to reject the conditions of this world as a source for happiness. And so this is what we're seeing here in this section of the Srimad Bhagavatam with Jada Bharat. They say, there's a saying that experience is the best teacher. And so Jada Bharat certainly had experience with the material nature. At one point, 2 lives ago, he was the emperor of the entire world. Bharat Maharaj, he was the emperor of the entire world. And then from there, he gave it all up, went to the forest at Pulaha Ashram, and engaged in spiritual life. And then, of course, you know the story. This deer came along, and he became totally enamored with the deer, and basically went crazy, died, then took a deer's body, lived his life as a deer, and then came back, and now he came back as Jada Bharat. And so now Jada Bharat, he had enough. He'd seen the power of the material energy, so he's not getting involved with it. So he's playing deaf, dumb, and just not getting involved at all. And the Bhagavatam it's full of examples of this, of people who kind of, you could say, went through the ringer in terms of sense gratification, and then ultimately had the realization that this sense gratification is suffering, that it's temporary, and that it's not bringing real satisfaction. And this was certainly I was just reading in the 9th canto about King Yayati. And King Yayati went through such an ordeal with, Devayani and Sharmishta. He rescued Devayani from the well, and then, because she had offended Sharmishta, and so then Sharmishta had to become her maidservant, along with all of her friends. And then, so eventually, so she also was married, so then Devayani had a child with her husband, King Yayati. And then this made Sharmishta quite jealous. So then she approached King Yayati for a child. And as a Kshatriya, he couldn't reject a woman who wanted to, unify with him. And so he did, which was against the order of Shukracharya, who then promptly cursed him to become old. And then, the story goes on that Shukracharya realized that that this would affect his daughter, Devayani. And so then he said, okay, fine, you can give your old age to your son, to one of your, or to anybody who will take it. And so King Yati asked all of his sons first. None of his sons wanted to, except his youngest son, Puru. And so he gave his old age to Puru, and that way he was able to enjoy for the next 1,000 years with Devayani and his other, with Devayani. And then, so eventually, of course, it dawned on him that he wasn't satisfied, despite, having Maha sense gratification for the last 1,000 years. And so he decided he left everything. And and then this was also the case with Priyavrata at the beginning of the 5th canto. Priyavrata, of course, all of Priyavrata's activities were extremely glorious. But he was a brahmachari, and then Lord Brahma came, told him to take the throne of the world, so he did. Performed so many activities, but then one day it just kind of dawned on him. It's like, wait, what am I doing? And so then he went back to, what was it? He was at Mandara Hill. Was that where he was? Yeah. And then, continued on in his spiritual life. So the Bhagavatam it's a major theme in Bhagavatam. This, somebody very powerful, engaging in sense gratification. And then ultimately giving it up, realizing that it's not, doesn't bring real satisfaction. And even sometimes the Bhagavatam might seem a little repetitive in this regard. There's just like so many, all these kings, they're engaging in household life, they're engaging in ruling the world, and then they realize that it's not that it doesn't bring them satisfaction, then they leave. There's a lot of things like this, a lot of stories like this in the Bhagavatam. Of course, they're histories. And so this is because the purpose of the Bhagavatam is it's Paramahamsa Samhita. It's meant for the topmost transcendentalists. And so it doesn't pull any punches, it doesn't mince words. It's just trying to drive into our heads and grab us by the shoulders and shake us and say, why are you still in this material world? Why are you still rotting in this material world? Just give it up. Just give up the whole charade and engage in spiritual life. So, the impersonalists, they also have this understanding of the fact that this material world is suffering, and that we should give it up. But it's not a complete understanding. Their understanding is simply to negate those things which are bad, and to not experience suffering. But the Vaishnavas, we have the understanding that the soul, beyond just not experiencing suffering, that the jiva can actually experience happiness, that there's a positive state of spiritual existence. And so the devotees don't accept this impersonalist understanding because they understand that there's actually some kind of bliss. So the state of existence of just negating suffering, it's not satisfying, it's not fully satisfying to the soul. There's still more to achieve, you could say. And so that's why everybody who achieves this Sayujya Mukti, this impersonal liberation, they have to come back. They have to come back to this material world because they're ultimately not going to be satisfied. And so they return looking for real satisfaction. But actually real satisfaction for the jiva, what we're really looking for is rasa. We're looking for some kind of taste, for some kind of mellow. Prabhupada uses that word. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in his Dashamula, his 10 roots of Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy, the first line is Amnaya Prahatatvam Harimiha Paramam Sarvashaktim Rasabdhim. So he's saying that Krishna, he's the ocean of nectarian rasas. Krishna is, he's completely full of rasa. So he has what we're looking for. Krishna has what we're looking for. But without this understanding that Krishna is the ocean of rasa, we look for rasa, we look for taste in material things. We look for material rasa. The mind is always looking for some kind of material rasa, the material mind. And practically the whole world now is going on based on all different kinds of flavors of the material energy. And one good example is music. Music is, there's so many different kinds of music. You have happy music, you have sad music, you have dark music, you have light music. So many different flavors or moods of music, and they tell all these different songs are telling so many stories. So many stories. You want one person who doesn't exist loves another person who doesn't exist, then they break up and get back together, whatever. So many different rasas, so many different moods to relish, for materialists to relish, in music and also in literature, and so many, movies also is another big one. Yeah, and video games, and video games too. But Prabhupada says that all these material rasas, these different flavors of the material energy, it's just wet stool, dry stool. It's just different consistencies of stool. But the fact is that it's all stool. Because for the devotees, for those who have an understanding that this body is not the source of happiness, and that it's actually a very low standard of happiness, they find this material sense gratification to be disgusting. Like Yamunacharya has this verse, Yadavani mama cheta Krishna padara vinde nava navarasa daman yuditam rantamasit tadavadi, but what is it? Tadavadi mane vara sustanishti vanangcha. Right, yeah. So he's saying that because he was a great king before, anyway, it's a whole story, but he was a brahmana, a great devotee, living in, what was he? He was living in he was in a gurukul or something. He was living in some ashram, and then somehow or other he got part of a kingdom, a very large part of the kingdom from the king. And I think he won some debate or something like that. And then, so then eventually one of his friends from the ashram, from the Gurukul, came and saw him, and they were talking, and they went for a walk. They went for a walk in this kingdom, in the gardens. And his friend starts, they start like bouncing shlokas off each other. Devotees like to do this. And so eventually they just keep walking. They just don't stop walking. And they walked out of the kingdom, and Yamunacharya took sannyas. And so then he was saying, this verse was spoken at that time, that he's remembering his past activities, engaging in sense gratification, particularly with women. And he says that whenever it comes to mind, his lips curl in distaste and he spits at the thought. Of course, it's a very exalted position. But the principle is that our happiness should be derived from, like in this verse, nava nava rasa, from newer and newer tastes, from newer and newer rasa in relationship with Krishna, in developing our relationship with Krishna. And so the process of Krishna consciousness, the process of Bhakti Yoga, is meant to reawaken our relationship with Krishna, which is dormant within us, which is natural, actually. The relationship is there. Prabhupada mentions that just like the relationship between a father and son, the relationship is there. Of course, because of distance or because of something, something may happen, the relationship may be covered, but the relationship is always there, and it's very easy to reestablish the relationship because there's a natural affection there. So we have natural love, we have natural attraction toward Krishna, but due to the influence of the modes of material nature, this natural love, this relationship has been covered. And so we have to, by the process of Krishna consciousness, we reawaken this relationship. And broadly speaking, this occurs in 3 stages. Of course, there's more detailed descriptions of the stages of spiritual realization in Krishna consciousness, described by Rupa Goswami and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, etc. But broadly speaking, it occurs in realization of sambandha, abhideya, and prayojana. So we have to understand sambandha. Sambandha meaning, sambandhas are it's like conceptual orientation. It's understanding who we are, who Krishna is, what the material world is, and what our relationship is. It's knowledge of our relationship with the material world, our relationship with Krishna, etc. It's like putting everything into perspective, understanding where we're at. Like you see in, I guess, like, you like go to a mall or like a theme park or something like that. It'll have like the directory, it'll have like a map of the place, and it says you are here. So that's like sambandha gyan. It's like you are here. Sambandha gyan is understanding where we're at. And then from this we develop shraddha, we develop faith, and we develop, and then through sadhu sangha, through association with devotees, we develop an understanding of abhideya, of the means by which to achieve the goal of Krishna consciousness. And so this, in the beginning, this is Vaidhi Bhakti, this is following regulative principles, the 4 regs, and chanting 16 rounds, and like that. And then eventually, through this process of Vaidhi Bhakti, we'll experience bhav, we'll experience spiritual emotion. And when this bhav is mixed in with our activities in Vaidhi Bhakti, then gradually we come to the platform of prema. And prema is pure love for Krishna. And this is our prayojana. Prayojana is the 3rd stage, the final stage of spiritual realization. And prayojana is the goal. Prayojana means the goal. And our goal is, like I said, pure, uncontaminated love for Krishna. Anyapilashita shunyam jnana karmadyanavatam anukulyena Krishna anushilanam bhaktir uttama. That to be free from any desire for karma, for jnana, and to simply engage in Krishna anushilanam bhaktir uttama, which is acting favorably, acting in such a way which is favorable for Krishna's pleasure, acting only for Krishna's pleasure. And this is known as Bhaktir Uttama. This is the ultimate stage of bhakti. And Prabhupada also mentions that this word prayojana means necessity. That this prayojana, this prema pumartha mahan, that this Krishna prema, it's the greatest necessity for ourselves, for others, for everybody in this material world. Krishna prema is the greatest necessity. You could say it's the goal of life, which is true. It is the goal of life. But actually, it is life. Krishna prema is real life. Life in this material world is not real. It's not real life. It's not our original position. But Krishna prema, engaging in a relationship with Krishna in the spiritual world, that's real life. That's the real thing. Because this world is full of so much anxiety. There's so many problems. There's always something to worry about in the material world, not the spiritual world. And so this Krishna consciousness, it provides us, it gives us a way to transcend all of this suffering. Because if one just steps back and with spiritual vision really analyzes what the situation is, what our situation is in this material world in relation to the spiritual world, actually all of these problems that we have in the material world are quite superfluous. They're very insignificant for one who is in Krishna consciousness. Because they understand that at the end of this life, that this life is temporary, and that at the end of this life, there is an eternal life in the spiritual world with Krishna. And that's actually where we're supposed to be. Where we're supposed to be is in the spiritual world, serving Krishna in a particular relationship. And so at the end of this life, if we properly engage in the process of devotional service as given by the previous acharyas, as given by Srila Prabhupada, if we just do it in this one life, then at the end of life we'll achieve a spiritual body. And we'll be reinstated in our original position beyond all the suffering, beyond all the misery, beyond all the worry and anxiety in this material world. And it's not easy. The process of Krishna consciousness is not meant to be easy. Like Prabhupada said that an easygoing life and Krishna consciousness don't mix. They're almost like mutually exclusive, you could say. But neither is material life. Material life is not whatsoever easygoing. I mean, there's so much you have to maintain, with, first of all, there's so much to maintain, but also there's so much to worry about. I mean, there's so much, without Krishna consciousness, of course, even devotees also, they have to worry about maintaining a family, they have to worry about maintaining, their selves, their body. But to think that these things are the ultimate goal of life, to think that the ultimate goal of life is just to worry about these things, I mean, that's a very distressing situation. That's a very distressing situation when you have no other alternative, when you don't see that there's anything else. So material life is also, there's a lot of struggle in material life. So we have to make the choice. Are we going to struggle for Krishna in Krishna consciousness, or are we just going to struggle in the material world? And if we struggle for Krishna, then we'll actually achieve a lasting result, a real lasting result, that at the end of this life we'll go back home, back to Godhead, and just be able to serve Krishna directly every single, I guess you could say every single day, but it's in the spiritual world, it's the eternal. Yeah, every single moment, there you go. Yeah. At every single moment, fully absorbed, and free from all the miseries in this material world. And the alternative is just to struggle very hard for temporary satisfaction. So the choice is clear, of course, for anybody who has any kind of intelligence, that we should struggle for something which is eternal, for a lasting result. So that's all I have. Maybe we can have some questions. Or
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Vijay Krishna Prabhu. I think we have a local question.
Yes, I can wait.
Oh, I get. Do we?
Oh, I have one.
Okay.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
So the Sambandha,
Mm-hmm.
Sambandha Abhidaya Prayojana, Sambandha also includes the understanding of our actual relation with Krishna.
Mm.
So there's a state when at the very highest state when that's revealed to you.
Mm.
But the first stage of Sambandha is obviously understanding this world, where it comes from, and who we are in relationships. So there's also that added understanding. Sambandha is a very, a very advanced state too.
Yeah. Thank you, bro.
Bhagavan Sambandha Bhakti Abhidaya Prema Prayojana Vedatina Vastukai. So Bhagavan is, the Lord is our relation. Bhakti is the process, and Prema Prayojana is, that's Vedas describes. This is from Chaitanya Charitamrita.
Hmm.
Yes, so Bhagavan himself, Sambandha, when you think about it, he's the one who we're all
Hmm. Saul.
Thank you, Amogha, Lila, for the nice class.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I just had a quick comment. I was talking to... Oh, okay. Hare Krishna. Dharma Seti, I was talking to him earlier, and he just mentioned that what brahmachari means is like somebody, they don't look for comfort. And then I just noticed a lot of people in the material world, they try to find a nice, comfortable life, you know.
Yeah.
They build up their necessities and everything.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it made me think about that. Thank you.
Jai, thank you. Dimitri, do you have any reflections? Okay, Vijay Krishna Prabhu, you're on.
Yes, Amogha Prabhu, thank you very much. You're very kind. The quote from the purport related to the verse you chose for today, 5:10:10, is as follows, quote, "At the present moment, all human society is laboring under the bodily conception. Therefore, in the Shastras, people in this age are referred to as dvipad pashu, two-legged animals." End quote. So, Prabhu, my question is, if I may, what are the symptoms of a human being who is no better than a two-legged animal?
Well, the symptoms of a human being who is a two-legged animal are described in the Bhagavad Gita. I don't have the Sanskrit in my head, but yeah, those who are strongly entrapped by the consciousness of trying to enjoy this material world, and those who are constantly engaged in eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, and that's the goal of their life. And people who are constantly, like Saul was saying, looking for a very comfortable situation to engage more in eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. So the symptoms of a person who is dvipad pashu is the same person, or are the same symptoms as a chaturpad pashu, a four-legged animal. Because, yeah, it's the same thing. Practically, they're doing the same things, but just in a different body: eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Of course, for those who are in a human body who are acting like animals, they do it in a much more, you could say, polished way. You know, for example, a coyote. I don't know why I thought of a coyote, but a coyote has a little den in the ground, and he's got his little coyote puppies there. But a person who is in the bodily concept of life, who's engaged only in sleeping, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, you know, they may have a big house, they may have a small house, but the fact is that both of them just have a dwelling, and they're only using it for eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. So the symptoms of a person who is a dvipad pashu, who's a two-legged animal, are this. It's exactly the same, practically speaking, as one who is a four-legged animal. Or, of course, there's also two-legged animals actually in animal bodies. But anyway, I think you get the idea. Is that a satisfying answer?
Yes, better than satisfying, Prabhu. Again, wonderful answer to my question. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Anything else? Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.